Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise here in strong support of this amendment. And I feel that giving options that the consumer can then go and choose what of these options are appropriate for them, for their family, is important. It's about choice, it's about options, it's about affordability. So yes, we can have a long list of things that can be covered, no question about that at all. The Cadillac version of insurance, yes, we can get that, but can we afford it? That's a question we have to ask as well. And what this amendment tries to do is balance the fact, yes, it's available like any other product, but at the same time, you have the option of choosing that product as well. So everyone does not necessarily have to purchase and get all of this which is being discussed in the underlying bill. And for that reason, I stand in strong support of this amendment. And through you, Mr. Speaker, just a question or two to the proponent of the amendment.
Please proceed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, so in the amendment, all that was talked about in the underlying bill will be available, but obviously it is a choice. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from my distinguished colleague. Representative, that is correct. Sections 3 and 4 of the bill discuss the new mandates that are created in the underlying bill, and this would simply make them optional. So they would be available to consumers to purchase, but it would be their choice. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Srinivasan.
So through you, Mr. Speaker, the family or the individual will then get to choose what coverage they want that's appropriate for them, and obviously will be given a price tag for what that is going to cost them as well. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sampson.
That is correct, Mr. Speaker. Much like some folks might choose to drive the safest vehicle, Volvo, for example, but it's expensive. But they feel comfortable choosing a more expensive car that provides additional protection, and other people might choose to purchase a less expensive vehicle. This puts the choice back in the hands of the consumer to make their own choices as far as what's best for them and their health care. Through Mr. Speaker.
Representative Srinivasan.
And through you, Mr. Speaker, my final question to my good colleague is the mandates that are already existing, that is not included in this amendment. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sampson.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. No other mandates are contemplated in the amendment before us. Thank you.
Representative Srinivasan.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, maybe my question was not clear, but what is already existing in the books, what we already have, so that is not up here as an option as well. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is correct. This only applies to the new additional insurance mandates that are created with the ultimate passage if this bill passes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Srinivasan.
Mr. Speaker, we have had the experience for a few years now of the Affordable Care Act. We all thought at one point it was a phenomenal idea, and then came to realize, unfortunately, in a relatively short time, not only was a rollout of the Affordable Care Act not done in an appropriate way, had a lot of glitches, technical glitches, but that's a different story. But also the impact that it had as far as insurance premiums, as far as coverage, and as far as individuals deciding not to go for the insurance because they just couldn't afford it at all. So at the end of the day, yes, the intentions were great, no question about that at all. We cannot argue against intentions. They were good intentions, but they were impractical. And that's what we have seen. And that is why all of this conversation, this dialogue of repealing and replacing. It has to be done correctly. You cannot just repeal for repeal's sake. I'm a physician, I'm well aware of that. If you're going to repeal it, it has got to be done correctly. It has got to be replaced appropriately as well. So for us to move forward with what we know has not been working and try to say, let's put that into state statute, to me, I don't get the idea behind or what is the purpose of that at all. If it is successful, if that was the ideal version, there would be no discussion of repealing and replacing. The very fact that has been a constant conversation agreed upon by everyone, including the medical societies. So this option here that is presented is a good option where individuals, families can choose the coverage that they need, and things will not be so expensive that they will be, at the end of the day, unaffordable, or the premiums will be so expensive, number one, or at the end of the day, the deductibles so high that individuals will not go to seek medical attention. We have a great option here where the requirements are available, and I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will see that this is a viable option for our state and support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.